Guys, I got super, 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 super emotional on this interview. It's hard not to get emotional it's hard not to get emotional. You see exactly what I'm talking about. Today I had the opportunity to interview Miss Trish Ruse. My God, she has a story, a wonderful testament, and I feel like so many people need to hear this. So, no matter where you are, don't forget your coffee, don't forget your tea, or whatever it is that you drink to get your day started, and tune in. Welcome back to God Coffee and Resilience podcast with Reese. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. Today we have Miss Trisha Ruse with us. Hi, Trish. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey girl, hey, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming on and willing to share your story of resilience with us. I'm super excited, but before we get into that, I always do a little icebreaker. And so it's a two-part. I always ask, what's your favorite caffeine beverage? Because it's got coffee, and everybody knows I love coffee. But everybody don't like coffee. But what is your favorite caffeinated beverage?
I love an iced mocha. I can have it in the afternoon or in the morning, and I'm a
Uh-huh.
Texas girl, so it's always hot here anyway. And so if you can have iced coffee, you can stay cool and you can get caffeinated.
Yes, wait, you're in Texas. I'm in Texas.
I know, yeah, I'm in Dallas, so that's where I live.
Huh? I'm in Plano.
Well, right
I am
now I'm
not
in
that
McKinney
far
with my
away.
mom, so I'm like right down the street from you.
This has never happened before. Like I've interviewed New York, Arizona, Texas.
Well, I'll come over after this, and we can actually have that iced mocha.
Okay, I'm here for it. You hear this, guys? Look at the Lord. I have a friend now. I've only been in Texas for 4 months. And so I haven't really met anybody out here. So now I'm happy to have a friend.
I will
Sounds so sad,
happily be
but
your
I'm happy.
friend.
Yay, I have friends. Okay, guys, let me get back on track. So, the next part of the icebreaker would be, what are three things that people would not guess about you or may not know about you?
Well, it depends on how well you know me, but I think that people that even know me pretty well don't know that I actually can play the piano. And I played six sports in high school, so I feel anyway, that I can pretty much
Uh-huh.
like pick up a ball and play a sport or coach a sport, and I'm good. And then also, I grew up in a really little small town. And so
Uh-huh.
even though I'm a Dallas girl and I've lived in Dallas now for over 20 years, I definitely kind of grew up in a slower way of life out in the country. So a lot of people don't know that about me either.
No, you got one more.
Oh, no, that was okay. So it's the piano, the sports, and the small town. Those were my three.
Oh, sports went right over my head. Okay. I yanked that with the first one. Okay. I'm not cheating. Gotcha.
Well, and
That's an interesting.
that kind of goes with the small town because in small towns you have to play every sport they ask you to, or they probably don't have enough to make a team. And so,
Oh.
a lot of people from large towns, like if you play a sport, you only get to pick one. And I got to pick a lot. So that was kind of fun for me to grow up playing a lot of different sports and live that small town life for a little bit.
What was your favorite one? Out of all the sports you've played, which one had to be your favorite?
I have always been a big fan of volleyball. And that's actually where my career took me was coaching volleyball. I did coach basketball
Uh-huh.
for a little bit until I became a head volleyball coach. But there's just something about the sport that I was really drawn to. And so I not only love playing it, but I love coaching it as well.
Awesome. Okay. See, I've always thought like when you're playing volleyball, your hands would just get sore, like from that one part of just like hitting, bumping, bumping.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, have you ever been bruised or beat up from from serving and
I
hitting.
mean, I play and I coach so much that that doesn't happen anymore. But I
Don't
definitely
happen.
remember
Okay.
that when I was a kid starting out, that it kind of hurts after a while, and then you have to just get used to it.
Gotcha. As with anything else, I would imagine, as with anything else. I was never a sports person. I think I did dance in high school. I've done step team in high school, Spanish club. But I was never a sports type of person, but I like to dance and I like to step. So that was something I did. I tried out for cheerleading, didn't work out. So that's where I ended up.
I love it. I love it.
Yes. Well, all right, love. Well, we know that you are currently in McKinney, but you live in Dallas. But what
Mhm.
was it like growing up in the small town? Like, are you the only child, and how was your parents and all the things?
So I actually have a younger sister. She's about 3 years younger than me, and the reason we ended up out in the country was because my parents got divorced, and so my mom moved to a small town, and my dad still lived in the city. And so we were able to go back and forth and have kind of both lives growing up. But it took us a little while to embrace it, but I think it was a good experience
Yes.
overall because you just have a really close group of friends, mostly
Mhm.
because you don't have a lot of options for friends. But
Yes.
everybody was really close knit and, like I said, got to play a lot of sports and be involved in a lot of activities. So when I got older in college, I started as a part time job coaching. And when they asked what
Okay.
I could coach, I said, well, I've played everything, so just tell me what you need. And so I have coached volleyball, I've coached basketball, I've coached tennis. And then right now I'm coaching my 5 year old daughter's soccer team. And I have coached a little bit of Little League Baseball. And so I think that
Oh,
it gave me a little bit of flexibility with what sports I knew about. And then
right.
I've always just had the coaching gene. I always loved teaching and helping others learn how to play sports. So it all kind of worked out.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, your catalog is extensive. Guys, that I failed to mention, like she's a mama, she's an author and a speaker. So, all the things, all the things. So, yes, yes, I love it. I would definitely ask next, like when you guys were growing up, I know it was a little town, but what did you enjoy the most out of living in a little town, like family time, or what was a memory that you remember when you were younger? That was super fun.
I think that a lot of people in a small town, and we were in a lake town, have boats
Hmm.
or, forerunners because they have a ton of land. And so it's just a little bit slower of a pace. Now living
Okay.
in Dallas, you are pretty much stacked on top of each other with homes. And so you don't
Yes.
have the ability to just go out and play or get lost in the woods. I don't think we would let any of our children these days in a city get lost in the woods. But
Right.
life was just a little slower, and you could see the stars in the sky better than you can in the city. So it ended up being a good experience.
Okay. Well, when did you meet your husband? When did you guys meet? Because I mentioned, like you mentioned, when you went to college, you came further to the city into Dallas. Did you meet him in
Mhm.
college or after college?
Yeah, so we actually had a mutual friend that introduced us, and we actually met on a sand volleyball court playing volleyball. And he was a sophomore, I was a junior, and we started dating and ended up engaged right at the end of college. And we were at Baylor
Oh,
University in Waco, and we loved our college experience, but we didn't think that we wanted to stay in Waco to have a family and raise kids and jobs. And so we ended
right.
up, when we got married, we moved to Dallas, and that's where we've been
Mhm.
ever since.
Yay! Okay. So what year did you guys get married?
So that was in 2005. And then I really immediately started my job that I had gotten right away at Bishop Lynch High School. And so
Uh-huh.
I had served there really the last 16 years until I left just a few months ago. And I was the director of admissions, and so I helped
Uh-huh.
students and parents find their and navigate the admissions process because it is a private school, so you have to apply to get in. And then
Mm-hmm.
I also was the head volleyball coach, and so I got that opportunity to work with thousands and thousands of young kids and their parents to help navigate the high school process, as well as really getting to know girls, especially at a more intimate
Right.
level by being their coach.
Yes, definitely. And I'm sure that they needed you and your wisdom, guidance, and mentorship. That's a very delicate moment in high school because everybody's trying to figure out who am I? I'm about to embark on young adult life, and adulting is ghetto. Can I just say that, guys? Like, it is. I want to go back. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I would love to take maybe like not stay forever because I do enjoy the freedom, but just have somebody else worry about the bills and work and all this stuff and just let me be free and live life just for a couple of
Yep.
days, you know?
Yeah, we didn't know how good we had it until we became adults and realized we have to be responsible all the time, especially with
Yes.
little kids. I mean, we can't even leave town because they always have
Mm-mm.
activities and they always have things going on.
Right. Speaking of kiddos, when did your first kiddo come about?
So we had Cameron. So he's our oldest. He's 10 and a half. He was born in 2011. And then
Yes.
we had Annabelle. So that's really what my book is about, is our journey with her. And when we found out we were
Yes.
pregnant with her, that was in 2014. And
Uh-huh.
our sweet little son had been begging for, he said, he called it a lady baby. So he wanted a baby sister because all of a sudden, a lot of his little friends at daycare started getting little siblings, and he thought that was really cool. And so he wanted one and started asking us for one. And we just didn't know how to answer those questions. So we just said, pray about it. Maybe you'll get a lady baby. And so we had Annabelle in 2014 on December 29th. And then, and like I said, that's what my book is about her life and
Right.
legacy. And she passed away at 6 days old. And then we ended up being pregnant again about 7 months later with our little rainbow baby. And so that's Andy. And she
Mm-hmm.
is something else, curly, curly, ringlet blonde hair and just on fire all the time. And so
All
she's
the
now
time.
5 years old, and Cameron, like I said, is 10. And despite their age gap, they're just the best little buddies. And
Oh,
Cameron really takes care of her and looks after her, and she really respects and looks up to him. So they still fight like every other group does or siblings do, but they really love each other. And I think the fact that my son Cameron did experience the loss of his other sister, he has a really strong protection vibe over the youngest Andy and really cares about her and loves her a lot.
yes. What was backing up a little bit? In 2014, what was the issue like? Did the doctors ever say why did Annabelle pass away?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was when we decided we would try to get pregnant, everything was going really well with the pregnancy. And then right around 12 weeks along, back then it was a little bit newer that you could do blood tests to find out the
Hmm.
gender of your child. And so I
Right.
remember at a doctor's appointment, kind of at the very end, she just mentioned this to us and asked us if we wanted to do the blood test. And I said yes. I mean, that seems really easy to get to know gender earlier. And so after we did the blood test, I didn't think a lot of it, but then she gave me a call about 10 days later and told us that not only was the baby a girl, but that she had trisomy 18. So the blood test also revealed a
Okay.
panel of other things. And trisomy 18 is much like Down syndrome. So Down
Hmm.
syndrome is actually called trisomy 21.
21.
And
Hmm.
with trisomy 18, there's typically more heart defects. So Annabelle actually, they found out had a two-chamber heart, so she was not um, made with four chambers in her heart. And there's just a lot of, issues where a lot of those babies do not make it full term. So they told me that there was only a 10% chance that we would get to meet her alive at birth. And the specialist that I was referred to actually recommended an abortion. So it was just a really whirlwind of news and information all flooded to us within a 24-hour period that not only was our baby not healthy, but they were recommending an abortion. And for my husband and I, we just had to process that information
Mm-hmm.
and pray about it. And my concern, his concern was, well, if you're recommending an abortion, does that mean that something could happen to me? Like, am I at danger of dying or something
Yes.
happening with the pregnancy? And when we learned that that was not the case, and we started to learn more about it, we knew that
Mm-hmm.
we would not choose an abortion for her. And so we told that doctor, and shortly after sent an email to all of our friends and family and to my volleyball team, because volleyball season was about to start up, that this was the condition of our child, and no matter what, we would let God's will be done and
Right.
pursue the pregnancy. And the thing that really hit me in this moment was that as a coach for many years, I'd always told my kids to try their best no matter the outcome. And so whether that meant you lost or you won a game, you just go out there and you fight your hardest, and you can walk away knowing that you did the very best you could. And, for me in that situation, I just knew that it was my job to fight and do everything I could. So try to keep
Right.
my blood pressure down and get enough sleep and attend my doctor's visits and ask all the questions that I could in order to prepare for her to be alive or not alive, so that if she was born alive, I could give her the best life that I could with possibly the short time that I had with her. And so
Right.
when she was born alive in December, it kind of defied all odds. That was not supposed to happen. And even the fact that she was born alive with a two-chamber heart, yet somehow she was breathing and functioning, the doctors and nurses were just completely surprised by the miracle of her life. And it was
Yes.
awesome to just watch all of these doctors and nurses be totally overcome with emotion by this little life that was going on when it wasn't supposed to. And so
Right.
she lived 6 days, which I know isn't a lot of time on earth, but I feel that her impact in those 6 days and what she proved, to the medical community and to the rest of us is just as valuable as our lives and what we're doing in this world, even though it was
Oh,
short lived.
yes.
So it was a really, I hate to say a positive experience because she still died and it was extremely painful. But I know
Right.
that we did the very best that we could. And I was so blessed to meet her and introduce her to our family, and everybody got to hold her. And we will always
Yes.
have that memory with us forever. And despite her condition and her short life, we were extremely happy that we chose to give her life instead of an abortion.
Yes, I think that's so powerful. Like I just have goosebumps and fighting tears over here. Edward syndrome. Yeah, just like Downs and all the other things, people usually prepare for the worst. And for you, you were just like, well, if nothing is going to happen to me, and if I'm not in any type of danger and I'm still healthy, we're going to proceed on despite what you say, because as people of faith, we pray about everything, but we also believe in what God can do. And
Yeah.
so saying, like, hearing what you said, like, okay, they expected her to be born like stillbirth or something of that nature, or die, or only live for a couple of hours. She lived for 6 days. And so even though she was only here for 6 days, she was like, ha, take that.
Yeah.
And I went on your Instagram and I saw the picture you put up, and like I was already like doing my research and things before we got on today, and I was just touched. Even before I did that, just the emails that we were going back and forth with.
Hmm.
You mentioned your book, and it's called, guys, When Wishes Change. Um, Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so I felt that God was calling me probably around 2019 at Thanksgiving to write a book about our experience with Annabelle. And I am not classically trained as a writer. I have a degree in marketing and a minor in public relations. But when I felt that calling, I just knew that was something I was supposed to do. And,
Right.
there's a lot of parts of the book where I am very vulnerable and I just kind of reveal how God spoke to me during that time. And so, one thing I talk about is when I felt that calling coming to me, I didn't really verbalize it. It just came to my mind and I started thinking about it. But very shortly after, maybe a day or two after, I got a Facebook ad, and the title of the ad was, "Have you ever wanted to write a novel? Take this class." So I thought, well, that's funny. I just kind of got this direction to write a book, and now it's telling me to take a course, which makes a lot of sense. Hadn't really thought of that. And so when I clicked on the ad, I knew I recognized the face that I was looking at of the teacher of the class. And it turns out the class instructor was one of my best friend's sisters, who I had no idea was. I knew she was writing novels, but I didn't know she was teaching
Yes.
classes about writing novels. And so I
Uh-huh.
immediately enrolled in the class, and over Thanksgiving and Christmas break, watched every video and did a lot of assignments to learn how to write a book. And then really I started writing in 2020. And the fact that we went through a pandemic shortly after, it just naturally gave me a little bit more time to think and write than I probably would have had with my busy life and with all the activities, our kids were involved in. And then in January of this year, I had finished writing. I'd given it about 2 months off before I wanted to start editing. And it was incredibly overwhelming. Just, I was so
Oh yeah.
in the book, and having to go back over and correct and write and rewrite. It was almost like I was too close, and I knew I needed to find an editor. Well, again, never done that before. And because the book was so vulnerable and it gave away so much of who I was and what I went through emotionally, I think I just got scared. And so I remember it was on a Sunday in January. I closed my laptop and said, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to finish this book. Um, I did what I thought I was supposed to do, but I don't know. Maybe I read this calling wrong. And so I literally told God I was done. And like 3 minutes later, I get an email. And of course, at this point, I'm looking for any distraction. And I read the email, and it was from a coworker, a science teacher that I rarely saw, rarely spoke to, that out of the blue on this January day on a Sunday, 3 minutes after I tell God I've given up, she emails and says, "I don't know why, but today I am thinking about you and your daughter Annabelle and your story and how much impact it had on me when she was born." And at this point, that had been 6 years ago. And so for her to email me out of the blue 3 minutes after telling God I was done, I'm sitting there in tears reading this email thinking, okay, God, like I get it now. You're telling me I've got to finish this book. And then again, shortly after, a really good friend connects me with an editor who happens to live 2 miles from my house. And we connected so fast, so immediately. She's a Christian. She's an amazing editor. And just, she got me. And once that relationship took off, I knew that was who I wanted to edit my book. And she helped me get to a place where I felt great about the story, and she just kind of made it sparkle. And those things are no coincidence. I mean, all of those things were things that God put in my lap and said, kind of, with you and your podcast, it's like, okay, I feel this calling. I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to need some guidance. And I left my job at the end of April to pursue being an author and speaker. And now that I have gotten some speaking gigs and I'm kind of taking off in that route, every time I speak, I meet people who I am impacting and Annabelle's story is impacting. And every time it's a message of, yes, this is where I want you to be at this point in your life. And it's terrifying and it's scary and it's different and it's nothing that I've ever done before. But I feel that when you are called to do something that God asks you to do, if you just say yes, no matter how scary that yes is, you will find hope and guidance and direction. And I can't tell you how many times during that pregnancy I just cried out in anger and frustration because I was so scared about the what ifs and how this was all going to play out. And I got those signs constantly of God just saying, it's okay, I've got you. Keep going. Keep pursuing this path that I have laid for you. And now I can look back and I feel like I can say, now that it's almost been 7 years, that I can turn around and I can help others and I can talk about my story and the resilience and perseverance that I had to go through to help encourage others through their journeys, whatever that may
Right.
be.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, you made me
And
shed a tear.
I mean, I
But
tell
it's
people all the time, if you ask me to speak about my daughter and she passed away in my arms. Like, that was the hardest moment of my life. But if I would have had to talk about that, or even when I was asked about it years ago, I couldn't keep myself together. And even 2 years ago, my husband and I both had a very difficult relapse. We can't really pinpoint a trigger, but he went through a really hard time of grief, and so did I over her loss. And, it was weird. We were like, why is this happening to us? It's already been 4 years. Shouldn't we be better by now? But that's not how grief works. I
no,
think God challenges us to get through hard times, and you do see, a light at the end of the tunnel, and things will get better. But it does not mean that for the rest of your life that you can put that in a suitcase and zip it up and be done.
right,
There will be times when you have to face whatever it is again and face it and have hard days. And I've realized now that that's just a part of the journey. And you have to be willing to share that with others, because I think 2 years ago, I felt really self conscious about telling people if I was having a bad day, it was because of a daughter that I lost years ago. Because number one, a lot of the people in my life were different. So they didn't even know me at the time. And then second, I felt like, well, they're just going to judge me and think you should be over that by now, and think, why are you still upset about something that happened years ago? And now that I've talked to so many more people that are still grieving the loss of someone, even a decade ago or 2 decades ago, or even recently, I have a better understanding that grief is over time and it's not anything that goes away, but you can
most
learn
definitely.
to help others and share and find community to get through it.
Right. I lost my grandpa in 2015 to dementia, and now my grandma has just been diagnosed with dementia 3 months ago. And so now she's going through the same thing he went through. So it's been 6 years since he passed, and he is still the screensaver on my phone, and I still think about him every single day. So you're right
Right.
about that. Grief is definitely over time. And I do have my days, and I feel like the inevitable is upon us with my grandmother. And so I know nobody lives forever, but it's coming. And she's not doing too well, but just keep prayers for her.
Oh, I'm
Keep
so
prayers for
sorry. I know what that's like
no.
too. And you probably are, you get triggered too by the fact that your grandma's going through the same thing as your grandpa. And so then it
Oh
may even
yes.
bring up the pain that you felt back then. And so I guess I didn't realize that before, that, if I see another child on, one of my Facebook communities that is just like my Annabelle, and will die and has a two-chamber heart, you start to resurface some of those feelings. And,
Right.
the thing that I think gives me hope is that God never intended her to live more than those 6 days. And that whatever our, expiration date is, that will be what has already been written in the books long before we were born. And
Yep.
I struggled really hard in the beginning, thinking, for example, at her 1 year birthday, I would see another 1 year old and say, oh, that's what she would be learning to walk, and she would be smiling and laughing. And, I kind of would get lost in this tunnel or this rabbit hole of the what if. But the truth is, she was not supposed to live more than her 6 days. And so I have learned to more or less say, that's not what her life was meant to be. She was never meant to walk. She was never meant to talk or go to kindergarten or have kindergarten graduation or get
Right.
married and have kids. She was only supposed to be here for 6 days and she fulfilled her purpose, and she's back where she is with the Lord. And now when people die in my life, my first thought is that they get to meet her and they get to see her. And that is
Yes.
a weird way of thinking, but it's just like my grandpa recently died too. And I think, oh my God, I loved him so much. And he knew what I went through. And I hope that he is holding her right now or they are meeting in heaven. And that will be an amazing moment when I get to reunite with her as well. And so it at least, I've tried to change my perception or the way I think about it to make it better. And it's not better. It's not, you're never fully healed, but it does help. I think that it does help to have that eternal vision of what our lives are supposed to be like is once we're gone here, we live eternally with God in heaven. So
Right.
it helps.
And I know that was very hard for your husband too. I mean, how did he handle losing Annabelle, and how did you guys, once you learned about your rainbow baby, how was the pregnancy with her?
So we know now over time that, women and men a lot of times grieve differently, but I
Yes.
witnessed it personally. So Jonas didn't cry, rarely ever. He was the protector. And so he wanted to make sure that everything went off smoothly with the funeral and with me, and that I was healing and that I was always okay. And sometimes I almost got a little hurt, like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you more sad? But he was just as sad. He was just as lost as I was, but he had a different way of handling it. I do think, though, the fact that he harbored emotions caught up with him later on, and he would admit that as well. Um, but I do think that for both of us, we wanted another baby so desperately. And when we got pregnant again with our first child, we didn't even think of any bad things that could happen. It was an easy pregnancy and it was healthy, and I didn't know there was anything different. With our third, we knew better. We knew that things could happen during pregnancy with miscarriages and, different things that I had experienced along the way with a lot of my friends since now I was 5 years older and pregnant. And it was terrifying. I mean, the whole way I just, even at the appointments where they told me she was healthy and everything looked amazing, I was always waiting for the hammer to drop and to be told, oh, we were wrong. Something's wrong with your baby. But it really took a lot of faith. It really took a lot of um, just belief that God had our back no matter what the outcome was, no matter, what with Annabelle or with Andy. And I just remember the moment that I had a C-section, and when they pulled her out, I was like, I heard that cry, and I was like, okay, I think I can start believing that she's healthy and that she's here and that we're going to keep her, because I think the whole pregnancy, I almost didn't believe it. And with both of those back-to-back pregnancies with both girls, I was going through volleyball season pregnant with the incredibly busy schedule that I had. And there's a lot of emotional ups and downs in sports. I was going
Oh,
through
yes.
my admission season, which is really very stressful. And I had to really learn to calm down and keep my blood pressure low, and just start letting go, letting other people handle things, admitting when I was tired or not feeling well that I needed to take a minute off, and not be as stressed. And so I did get better at being a little bit less stressed or like very type A personality during those pregnancies. Because I'm just a person that wants to be in control and know what's going on and make sure everything
Yes.
goes perfectly. And in these situations, you have to be able to let go and let God take over. And I think that was the biggest lesson I learned in all of this experience, was to let God take control and to let God's will be done over my own wishes. And that's where that title came from. The idea of when wishes change is way more than expecting a healthy pregnancy and it changing. It's relevant to all of our lives. And so everyone
Right.
can relate to a wish or a dream that you had as a child, or maybe in college or in your 20s, about how your career was supposed to go because that's what you wanted, or who you were supposed to marry because that's what you thought you wanted. And then God turns that on you and something changes. And it's all about how you react to those changes. When your wishes change, will you tell God, thank you for allowing my wishes to change and bringing me to something new? Or will you resist that change and live, you know, in desperation and despair because it didn't go your way? And so, I believe that even if you haven't experienced a pregnancy loss like I did, the book is incredibly relevant. And I wanted to take a step back and make this about much more than my story and make it about everybody's
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yes, and that is so powerful perspective and learning not to have like steps. Like I am a type A person as well. And so like when I was going to school, for example, I was like, this is the school I'm going to. I can't choose between these two states, but it's one of these two. And this is what I want, and this is when I'm going to graduate. And I just had my whole life planned out, and none of it happened. Between the two states, I lived in a completely different state. So the Lord shows you time and time again that He's in control. If any time that we can all agree on, it was definitely last year when the shutdown happened, because we had no control over that. And we all had an idea of how 2020, the magic year, 2020 perfect vision would go. And
Yeah.
then it didn't go the way none of us planned. And we're still fighting the pandemic now. But that's a very powerful lesson, but a very wonderful skill to learn, is to just learn how to accept things. And the more people I continue to meet through the podcast and interview, the more I see this theme of just that, learning how to shift your perspective, whether it was Acosta's reference to Forrest Gump, your reference to just life in general. You only have the present, and we only have the now. So that's the only place we can be. And so just letting go of the future, forgiving and letting go of the past, and just being present in the present.
Mhm.
I think that that's wonderful. And
Yeah,
your
and I
faith,
think that God also, there is purpose in pain. And
it is.
I really wanted to seek out that purpose in my pain and say, if God puts me through this, there has to be something that will come out of it good. He would never create a situation where there's no purpose in pain. And so if I had to lose my daughter to maybe bring others to faith or back to their faith, or to help, many other people going through a really tough time, and that's the purpose of her life, then I'm willing to accept that, because then it becomes a bigger part of God's plan. And that can make sense to us. We can say that, kind of the analogy when you're quilting, you can only see these little things at a time, but when the quilt is done, you see this huge tapestry and you can see a
Yes.
picture or a bigger plan. And I remember during that pregnancy, I could not see a plan. Like, why in the world would this happen to me and my baby, and why would
Right.
she have to die? But God kept revealing the plan in little chunks and little bits, and kept saying, keep faith. I need you to be there and just be strong. One of the things that happened during my pregnancy was I had this extremely vivid dream where my dog, my childhood dog, my best friend of like 14 years, came to me and was talking to me in the dream as if that was
Uh-huh.
natural, right? And she
Yeah.
walked me down the aisle of my church, the sanctuary, with a full house of people praising the Lord, and kept telling me, you will be abundantly blessed. God has a plan for Annabelle. And there was other really pertinent things that she told me in that dream. And I
Yeah.
woke up and I didn't even tell my husband. I was so like my brain was just functioning like, what just happened? So I
Right.
wrote down all the things I was told in this dream, and I ended up getting
Uh-huh.
the courage to tell my husband I had this crazy dream. But when my daughter's funeral happened, I looked back, I saw the same crowd in the same sanctuary at the same time of day. The service was at 3 o'clock so that the students from the school I worked at could attend. The same light coming through the stained glass that I saw in that dream. And I remember being told in the dream that Annabelle will bring people closer to God. And after the service, I remember one specific text I got from a student that said she had fallen away from her faith, and just seeing the strength and hearing the praise and worship songs at the service totally changed her and brought her back to Jesus. And I thought,
Amen.
well, if only that one person was brought back to God through
Yes.
her life, that alone is worth it. And I believe that there's
Amen.
even more people that have been affected since then. But that was really powerful in that I had this premonition in this dream way before she was
Right.
born that her life would have purpose. And so to be honest with you, I never went through the stage of grief of being mad at God and,
Hmm.
turning away from my faith. I think if anything, I was closer because I really was wanting to seek out God's plan in the pain. And the more I
Right.
sought that out, the more I got to see that purpose.
That's right. I mean, I thought I was crazy when I was like, maybe there's a reason why I was sexually molested, or maybe there's a reason why I was physically abused, or maybe, and then, like in it, you're just like, it has no purpose.
Yep.
And pain and woe is me. But it took me years and some therapy to get to that point where I was like, maybe there's a purpose in this.
Hmm.
And much like you, I only wrote one book when I was in PA school, and it's like a memoir. And I just wrote everything down from start to finish to where I was. And then I took a couple of chapters to encourage and inspire people. And I just let it go. And I never promoted it. I never marketed it, nothing like that, because I know nothing about marketing. And it's funny because my brother took up marketing and PR, and he graduated, and he was I know nothing about it. I'm more of like this type person. But
Yeah.
when I wrote that book and I let it go, I was just like, well, Lord, there must be a purpose for it. It was like maybe a handful of people that read it and said that they got something from it and they found it powerful. And to me, just like you said, it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth
Yeah,
it.
that's what God does sometimes. Like you go through something, but it's to help others, with their pain
Right.
and what they're going through. And you just think when you're in those moments of pain, like you feel very helpless and you feel isolated. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I remember when I found out about this diagnosis, I was searching for anyone like me to talk to. I needed to find
Right.
another mom who had also lost a child or had been diagnosed with the same thing and just ask questions. And so
Right.
now that I'm on the other side, I want to be that person that is available for others to ask questions. And I do think there's a lot of importance in being honest and vulnerable because it wouldn't be fair for me now to be like, oh, yeah, my life is amazing and it wasn't that bad. Because that's not true. I mean, it was so hard and it was a really hard time and I still have my bad days. But if you're honest with people and you're vulnerable but you also give encouragement, you're laying the groundwork to say when you do have a bad day, don't feel bad. I've been there too. Because you don't want to make it sound like it's all roses and butterflies and you'll get through it because you have God.
Right.
I mean, it is not always easy. And there will be
Mm.
pain and there will be tough days, no matter if you have strong faith. And so, yeah, I'm constantly seeking my purpose in this. And through
Right.
writing the book and speaking, I find that now, again, since it's been 7 years, I'm able to put together in words what I couldn't before. And I'm able to have a different perspective than I had before.
Right. And oh Lord, like you made me cry. But you're still my friend. But I mean, you've been through
Absolutely.
so much and you're such a strong person, but it definitely pays to say, hey, I'm not okay and I need some time. And you were able to recognize that and get through it. And I love the fact that you said, hey, I'm not trying to sell the story that as long as you have faith, it'll be all right. It will be all right, but you don't feel like that in the midst of the storm. So I'm happy
Yeah.
that you referenced that because a lot of people are just like, yeah, they're just, but
Yeah.
you made it through and you're out here telling your truth, your family's truth. And I just admire that. I admire your perspective, but also your strength and your faith in God. And like you said, it was not easy, but where you are now compared to where you were then and how many lives you're touching and changing and bringing and spreading the gospel, that's just amazing. That's just amazing. And I know that you guys that are listening, like, I can't even put into words, but I just know that you got something from this interview, whether it's relatable through pregnancy or just life period. Like you said, when wishes change, I do think that people should go on Amazon because it is on Amazon, guys, and purchase the book and support Miss Trish, but also you're going to get so much out of it. And I got so much out of it just by spending almost an hour with you from our little bit of time together. I'm definitely going to be purchasing the book and supporting you. And definitely, hopefully, we can link up in person now that I know you're so
Absolutely.
close. But before we leave off, you gave a lot of great advice throughout. But what would you say to someone who finds themselves in a similar predicament, if not the same, or if you could talk to yourself back then, being the person that you are now, what would you say?
Well, it's kind of twofold. I think that you really have to find community. And
Mm-hmm.
for maybe an introvert, that means podcasts, Facebook groups. For someone like me, I also needed to talk to someone and
Right.
find someone to talk to. And you can't do it alone. I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't do it alone. And someone else out there is going through something very similar. And
Right.
I mean, maybe podcasts existed 7, 8 years ago when I was pregnant, but I didn't really know about them. And that has become a really big part of me and how I have grown and learned professionally and emotionally is just hearing other people's experiences. And the second thing I will say, and this is kind of the thing I wish I would have done that I didn't, is that I didn't seek therapy. And I'm not sure why. I think I thought I could get through it by myself with family and
Mm-hmm.
friends. But the fact that there are professionals out there that have experience in
Yes.
handling your specific situation. So for me, there are therapists that specifically work with people that have lost children. I did not go to a therapist until about 2 years ago when I kind of
Mm-hmm.
relapsed. And the nuggets that I learned and the things that I heard from her were nothing that just a friend with no professional background could share. And once
Yes.
again, I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. I jumped back into my work and my busyness, and then we were pregnant again
Mm-hmm.
and going through that cycle. And so maybe in my head, I thought it was just too much for me. But
Right.
not only do you have to find community and people to back you and be your people, but you really need to seek out professional help. And that shouldn't have a stigma around it. It shouldn't have any kind of shame. It's just
Mm-hmm.
find somebody that can really have an educational background in what it is that you're experiencing to be able to help you a little bit. And you know what? I've had friends that maybe they had to get on some kind of medication to kind of
Right.
regulate themselves if they were depressed or had anxiety. And there's a lot of things that you just have to see if that's for you and if that's okay, if that makes you feel better. Because sometimes I think it's easy to get into such a hole and you feel isolated and more isolated and more isolated. And then you look up and you're really far away from your normal and it's really hard to
Yes.
get back. So whether it's podcasts, Facebook communities, reading a book, and maybe it's all of the above. I will say, I have my social media handles that you can follow. My Instagram is at When Wishes Change, and so is Facebook, and so is TikTok. And I didn't create those because I wanted, to be famous or something. I did it because I wanted there to be encouragement and
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and faith-based motivation.
Yes.
Because sometimes if we're going to be on our phones anyway, we might as well follow
Right.
people and get nuggets throughout our day of motivation and inspiration. And, I mix in family and fun, but I try to find, an excerpt from Jesus Calling, or I find some quotes or something else that's motivational, because I think all of us
Right.
need um, encouragement daily. It can't be like
We
go to
do.
church or read one book and you're just fixed and you feel better. I think that it
I
takes
wish,
a
but
lot of
no.
outlets and ways for you to continue on a path of growth and not, falling backwards.
That's right. Thank you so much for making that statement, all of the statements, all of the things, but a very important point about the no stigma with the mental health, because I am a mental health advocate. Most of you guys know I am a psychiatry PA, but I do push my patients to do therapy and not depend on medications solely. Medications help with chemical imbalance and all the things. Yes, but therapy is what's really going to push the medicine. It's like peanut butter and jelly; they work great together. If you don't need medicine, great. But if you are on medication, just don't depend solely on the medication. And
Yeah.
so, therapy is wonderful. I go to therapy and I'm on medication, so I can speak to both sides.
Hmm.
My anxiety is out the wazoo, especially when I graduated from PA school, but that's a different story for a different day. You already shared your social media handles where people can find you, but I just want to thank you again for being on the show, for all the gems that you dropped, and all the encouragement and inspiration, and all the things you've given my audience and me. Every time I interview someone, I always take something away from it. So I know, to everybody out there listening, they got something from it as well. I definitely have to have you back on the show. I feel like I'm like a broken record with that, but I just meet so many amazing people, and I'm just like, I gotta have you come back because you're just wonderful,
Oh,
and I
well,
enjoyed
thank
having
you.
you on the show.
Yeah,
Yes,
we just got to keep following what God's will is for our lives and just keep plugging away. And as scary as it can be, I mean, that's the right way. You just keep following and you keep listening and you keep pursuing, and God will
yes,
make it right. I mean, that's the thing too, is that it will be okay no matter what
mhm,
it is you're going through. You have to fight through it. You're not going to have great days every day. It's going to be
right.
hard, but you can get through it.
Yes, and amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Miss Trish. This is
No
Trisha
problem.
Roos that was on our show again today, guys. Please go support her, and please follow her on all social media outlets and connect with her. You might have a similar story or some, networking, all the things that come from this. But I've really enjoyed her. Even if it's just to say what you got out of this episode, please connect with her. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Miss Trish, again. And I shall see you next week. Bye, guys.